This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and the brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com. Hey guys, welcome to episode 35. Today on the show we have Rachel Ahtila. She's a BC girl. She actually grew up right here in Kelowna, which is where we record the podcast. She's a big game hunting guide. She's a member of the Women of Weatherby. She's got a podcast coming out, which is pretty exciting, so we'll make sure to let you guys know when that's released. She's extremely knowledgeable about the sport of hunting, so Kelly and I were very glad to have her on the podcast today. For those of you that are new to the show, make sure to go to our website, which is therookihunter.com. We've got all kinds of good stuff up there, including links to our social media. You can send us an email through the site. Everything's up there. For those that have been listening for a while now, make sure to leave us a rating or review in iTunes or from your favorite podcast app. We really do appreciate that stuff, and it goes a long way for us. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. Let's get into the show. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 35 with Rachel Ahtila.
What's up?
How you doing?
Pretty good. Same as always.
It's good. We're time traveling today.
Blast from the past.
So here's what happened. We recorded our interview with Rachel, and what happened was that my studio was booked, and rather than trying to reschedule the interview and all that kind of stuff, because she had a busy schedule and all that stuff as well, so we went to our friend's recording studio, which is Frequency Winery. It's a winery, but they do recording up there to infuse the wine. It's pretty cool. So anyways, he was kind enough to let us come and do the interview up there, and we had to share a microphone, so we're like totally out of our element, but I think it was okay. So rather than trying to like have a conversation between the two of us and do the intro and outro and like slide the microphone back and forth between the two of us, we decided to come back to my studio and record it here.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're singing a duet
Yeah, exactly.
when you have one mic like that.
So this episode with Rachel was meant to come out before Hank Shaw, which is episode 34. So anyways, we flipped him around, and we're going to pretend that didn't happen because the way it happened is we didn't explain what happened the weekend before, which was the mech race is the one thing that we did. And this was also leading up to the BC Interior Sportsman Show. So start with the Mountain Equipment Co-op series.
Yeah. Did we talk about that?
No.
I signed up for 5. Is it 5 or 6 races?
5 for sure.
5 for sure. Yeah. So that's throughout the year. I think there's one a month starting in April. So this was the first one, and you get to choose 5 for each one, whether it's 5K, 10K, 21 or whatever. So for the first race, I signed up for 5, and ran a few times before that, just getting myself ready.
Yeah.
Joints got a little bit sore. I think that's normal.
Yeah.
I do have some good shoes, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
But it still takes a while to get your body used to that impact again, right?
For sure.
You don't want to push it.
Nope.
So gradually got up to 3, 4, 5K again, and then ran the race, and it was awesome. There's like a sense of community there.
Yeah, for sure, man.
You get your little ankle bracelet, and
that's
take off.
The first time I've ever worn one of those. There's always seems like different methods of tracking time.
But I thought it was cool. Like, I just wanted to finish it. I wasn't trying to beat anybody or anything like that. So took off, and then it's interesting because on the way back, you're kind of running on different sides of a pylon.
Yeah.
And people are like high-fiving each other and cheering you on. And as you're going around corners, there's people with cameras, and all those folks that are guiding the traffic are cheering you on, and there's people walking their dogs cheering you on. So it's a very cool atmosphere.
Yeah,
Like
for
it's
sure.
very encouraging, and it just makes you feel good as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Which kind of takes your mind off of any pain or suffering you're going through. But
Yeah, for sure.
I found once you got going, like once you get past that 2-3 kilometer mark, you can pretty much just keep going. Your
Yeah.
body's kind of accepted the fact that
That's
you're
what
going to
you're
be
doing.
holding this pace, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think I did it in 26 minutes, and middle of the pack in the guys, I think I was like 15 out of 30.
Nice.
So, I mean, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. It's just a matter of getting out there and
Yeah.
doing it.
I think you came in second.
I
There's
did.
a skinny, like 19-year-old kid that,
Yeah. I think he might have been younger than that, but yeah, this kid just took off like a rocket. And it's funny how that race started is like very narrow, and I've only done a handful of races now, but my strategy now is like to try and get ahead of the pack and start at the front, so that you don't get stuck in those bottlenecks. So there was a few people, a group in front of us there, and everybody was running fairly slow to what I've experienced in other races and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
So basically, I just tried to blast through everybody and run up on the bank and get ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
But that the kid who won, he was like off like a rocket.
Yeah.
And there was a guy out in front of me for quite a while, and then he stopped to get water. I think he might have just like blew too much gas out of the start or something like that, and then I just was able to sneak into second place and held on to it.
Cool.
Ran across the finish line and straight to work. I couldn't even hang out afterwards, but
Yeah.
it was a nice day. It was a nice route.
Yeah, it was right along the lake
Yeah.
on the boardwalk, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
As we were coming back in the last kilometer, I started catching up to some people. And it's funny that all of a sudden, like you start just wanting to finish the race. And
Yeah.
then when you realize you are going to finish it, you try to catch up to some people.
Yeah.
But then I realized that, I mean, there might have been a couple that I caught up to that were actually doing the 5K.
Right.
And then you got the 10 and the 20K that started earlier,
Yeah.
and they're on the same track.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, like, obviously they're going a bit slower. They're pacing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, like, just getting them in my sights and trying to take them
Yeah.
all down, even though they were on a totally different
Yeah,
trajectory, right?
that's the fun thing about doing a race is like I know what my pace is for like just when I go and run on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and even then I'm trying to push myself, but I always seem to like really push my pace in a race because you're either trying to push yourself to catch up to somebody, or somebody's behind you. You can hear their feet hitting the pavement, and you don't want them to pass you. So like, it just pushes you that much further, and you're riding off a bit of adrenaline, and it's fun, man. I love it. And waiting for the race to start is my favorite thing. It's just kind of it's fun.
Yeah, the next one is cross country,
Yeah,
basically a trail run.
Rose Valley. That'll be that's a kind of like a hiking area outside of Kelowna here. There's a lot of hills. Have you been up there?
Yeah,
So,
I like it up there. It's a good hike.
Curious to see what the route looks like, because there's some steep stuff there.
I think it'll be on the bottom. There's a lot of networking in the bottom half, so I think it'll be maybe some switchbacks or something like that.
Well, how long are the races for that one? Is it?
It's 5-10. There's no 20.
There's no half.
No.
Cool.
So
Nice.
I signed up for 10 for that, but I actually switched it. I'm going to do 2 5s just to make sure I'm comfortable with it. And then I'd rather do my first 10 on flat, like concrete. I don't want to do my first 10 on a trail run. So.
For sure. Sweet.
So yeah, that's good. It makes you, it definitely gets you into shape.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We've said it over and over again. If you're looking to get in shape for the hills, just sign up for your local races. Every city and town's going to have some 5, 10Ks, half marathons, whatever they might be.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them can get pretty expensive when you look at some of the half marathons and stuff like that. Like there's the one they do in Kelowna here, like the Wine Country half marathon. I was looking at it the other day, and it's like $150 or something like that. So it's like,
is that just for them to like put it on and administer it and all the?
Yeah, I think it's like a privately run race, so there's a lot of cost with shutting down the streets and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of money to spend. The Seattle one was that much as well, I think, but that was more of like a destination and something to do. So I don't know what I'll sign up for next, but
Yeah.
we'll continue with the mech ones because they're a lot of fun and we're getting into nice weather here. So yeah, man. Well, should we pretend that we're going to call Rachel right now?
Yeah.
Hello.
Rachel.
How's it going?
Good. Mike and Kelly here.
Hey, Rachel.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Is my sound okay?
Yeah, you sound good. Good. So where are you right now?
The Reader's Digest version? I am actually just visiting in Calgary for another day, and then down to Montana for the backcountry rendezvous, and then back for a day, and then up to Alaska, and then finally home to Jaffrey in like a week and a half.
Wow. Been all over the place then, eh?
Oh, guys, I tell you what, this road warrior stuff, I'm at the end of it. It's been a long time, so.
Yeah, I guess it's all worth it though.
Oh, yeah. It's just like chasing dreams, right? Because you guys did a fair few shows this year, didn't you?
No, we didn't, but it's something that we need to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cody, we talked to Cody. Actually, he was the one that we're asking him about people he thought we should have on, and your name came up first with him. But he was another one that was saying you guys need to come down and start checking out some of these shows in the States. So it's on the list for next year. Just a great way to make connections with people and all that sort of stuff. So.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually too funny. Yeah, because that's what he mentioned your name, and I was trying to figure out if you guys had been to a show or where. Because Cody, as much as he's like, yeah, you guys need to do shows, I dragged him to like 4 shows this year. He's like, oh wow, there's a whole other world out there.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of shows we want to go to next year. We're gonna do the Kelowna. There's a BC Sportsman show in Kelowna this weekend. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna host a day of that, and then I know there's the BHA in Missoula this weekend.
Yep.
So I think you're gonna head down there. Mike and I'd love to go down there, maybe next year.
Yeah, to be honest, this will be my first BHA rendezvous, so I'm looking forward to it. Apparently it's a heck of a time, like as far as just meeting folks. And are you guys familiar with any of the BHA guys out in the Cranbrook area?
I joined BHA, and I did look at the board, but no, I wasn't familiar with any of the guys out there.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I know James Demchek just from cat hunting around there, but there's a few guys that are actually going to be coming down. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, there's some neat stuff going on, it's nice to see some Canadian stuff on the board too, right? So
yeah, for sure. So Rachel, do you have? I think you have ties to Kelowna, which is where Mike and I are from. So we're just curious.
What part of Kelowna are you from?
I'm in Upper Mission area, and Mike's in Glenmore.
Okay, small world. So I grew up, I was born on the west side, and then I went to school, like my parents moved over to Joe Rich, and I grew up in Joe Rich, went to Black Mountain Elementary, and graduated RSS. Yeah, so I'm a hometown girl.
Nice. Well, I should clarify, we grew up in the Kootenays in Trail.
Okay.
And then we've been here for about 10 years. Kind of came up at different times for different reasons, but ended up in the same spot. So. Oh
yeah, Kelowna's fun. I mean, it's different. I find like it's a totally different vibe than you get in the Kootenays, but
Definitely, yeah.
I was gonna say the men that have better hair than the women with their muscles and their lattes.
Yeah.
That's when I left. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not working.
It definitely has some of that, but I guess it is what you make of it. So it's got the convenience of a bigger center, but it's very easy for us to get out and be hunting within like 20 minutes here. You know what I mean? So.
Oh, exactly. You know what? Heck, it's a great place to be. It was a great place to grow up, and it's got a lot of opportunity. And like you said, it's not like Vancouver or Calgary. I don't know how my folks are living here, especially they came from Kelowna, and my dad still got the property in Joe Rich, and I think every weekend if he could, he'd teleport himself home.
Yeah, I bet, eh?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. So hunting, is that something that's, was strong in your family growing up? And is that what sort of led you into it, or?
To be honest, my dad had hunted a bunch when he was a kid. They kind of grew up doing that in the Okanagan, and some of his really good childhood friends there still go out and they hunt a bit when they can. But I faithfully met my godparents when I was, I think, 6 weeks old. My mom had gone to like this baby talk deal, and lo and behold, they became my godparents. And then at the age of 11, I was the second choice to go up north.
Oh, wow.
And Yeah, and like when I say like up north, people are like, "Oh, Prince George." I'm like, "No, try like half a province further beyond that." So, their hunting outfit was just south of Watson Lake in the Cassiar Muskwaga Chica area. So I wanted a horse really bad, and I think my parents were tired of me calling up ads in the newspaper, and they're like, "Nope, send her north."
Perfect.
So I got my start really there, shooting ground squirrels and training horses as a kid, and then I got to slowly start, wrangling on the trail outs where the guides would take all their critters to the mountains and getting camp set up. And then when we were 14 and 15, we got to wrangle, going into the first sheep hunt in August. And then when I was 16, I got to wrangle my whole first August for the sheep hunts. And then my Uncle Darwin would fly us down in the 185 straight from camp to Woods Lake, right north of Kelowna. We literally get off the float plane and have to go to school the next day. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So you basically got dropped right into it then, and I guess being part of that is obviously what inspired you to continue doing it.
It really did. It in a lot of ways, I kind of fell into it. There wasn't a lot of women that were guiding. There was Devlin Bradford, who's now Devlin Ostrich at the time, and I had known of one or two other gals, Yukon Bell, and like that's old time history stuff. And besides Devlin, there were no women that were really guiding to the extent that I wanted to. And at the time, oil and gas was taking off when I was in my later teens, and they couldn't get guys that wanted to come work out in the backcountry, especially for like $175 a day. An oil field worker can make that in like 2 or 3 hours and not even leave the comfort of their pickup truck. So I kind of was standing on the sidelines and was like, pick me. And I mean, I'm sure the first few clients were like, "Oh Lord, what are we getting into? We got a blonde-haired kid that's not even into her 20s yet."
Yeah.
So, when they're spending 40 grand on a hunt, there's a little bit of insecurity on their behalf, but you take it in stride. And some of the best information I've ever got was, keep your head down and work hard and go from there, and your actions will speak louder than words.
Yeah, for sure. What did you start guiding for?
So in northern BC, they have Canadian moose and goats. Yeah. And then from there, I dived right into it, and I was doing stone sheep.
Okay,
so,
nice.
Yeah. So kind of break yourself in easily, they might say. But
yeah, just straight to the top.
Straight to the top. You have to work your way up. And it was a year or two before I was guiding sheep. Just because there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to taking a client that's paid a good sum of money. And there's a whole maturity aspect of it. And I was teamed up with a guy that I had wrangled for as a kid, and he was a really good mentor, John DeVries. And from there, he kind of coached me on, it's so much of a personal relationship that you have with these clients too, and a friendship that you build. So
with some of these guys that you've been guiding, are they people that have been coming back year after year now? Or you get a lot of repeats, or is it new people all the time?
It'd be like 25% repeat. It's you bump into the same people at different areas because they're going after their big 29 or their 19 species, or they're doing all their sheep. So you get some people that kind of cross over naturally, and then I've had a few return clients that have booked solely with me, which has been quite flattering, especially for a young guide.
Yeah, definitely.
They've been men and women. So to me, I think that's when I kind of knew I had made it as a guide, was when someone had requested me, and not just some random person that was like, "Oh, I seen your Instagram. I want to go hunting with you." Clients that you've met through the trade shows or hunting camps, and
for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty neat.
So hunting's allowed you to travel all over the world. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where has it taken you?
To be honest, as a guide, I traveled to New Zealand in the spring of 2009. And although I had ulterior motives for originally going over there, I ended up guiding on the South Island for stag, tar, and chamois, and kind of working in the hunting camps, which was kind of a neat opportunity for people, especially Canadians, because we fall under the Commonwealth. Anything in the British Commonwealth is easier for us to get a year visa. So under my year visa, I was able to do that. And then when I came home in 2010, from there I kind of guided across North America for Jim Shockey and their hunting adventures. And then in 2015, I have a very best girlfriend who grew up a neighboring outfit away up in BC. And then a very good girlfriend that we've made over the years from Wyoming, who comes from a legendary sheep hunting family, Bijo Koi's Koi Creek Outfitting.
Okay.
And the three of us girls are like, well, we're not married. We don't have kids. Yes, we've got expensive habits like horses, but why don't we go to Africa? And I'm like, okay. And so we decided to go to Africa. And I'm sure we put a few gray hairs on our parents' head, and they're wondering what the heck we were thinking. But we had an awesome time. We went to South Africa, over to Namibia.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a very enlightening experience. It really makes you appreciate what niceties you have at home, as far as not living in a compound and not having to go behind fences. And so I don't know, I think we really take for granted what we have here in North America, and especially in British Columbia.
Yeah, certainly. Wouldn't mind backtracking to New Zealand, because that's something that's kind of hit my radar a little while ago as far as hunting opportunities that are available to pretty much anybody. So what's the setup for people who want to go to New Zealand and hunt? Do you have to be with a guide, or what's the process?
You don't. So New Zealand, when they first settled it, back in the early 1900s, they were trying to populate the country. And Captain Cook had actually let hogs and goats go on the island because literally there was no food source. They have no known predators. I think they've got one spider. They have no snakes. So when it was settled and populated and the British Commonwealth had moved over, there were gifts that were given. There was the Himalayan tahr, the red stag, the chamois, and fallow deer, and a few other game species, including elk, which they call wapiti. And because the New Zealand government has never had any predator problems, they actually, they have an overrun population. So through their history, they've had big commandeers where people will go in and do culls for red deer when the red deer market was really hot for velvet and for their meat over in Europe. So in a roundabout way, you don't need a tag. When you see these people that are going and hunting in New Zealand, and they're going to, Cardrona safaris or some of the well-known operations like Leithen Valley, they are going with a hunting area, but those animals are not free range. So, they're a genetically modified animal for the most part. And for the most part, they're behind a fence just to keep, other people, poachers, out, and to kind of keep them in one set area, because the country is not very big. It's kind of the size of Vancouver Island, if many people kind of figure that geographically in their head. So to go over as a non-resident, the only thing you have to have a hunting license for is birds. Okay. They have some migratory birds there, and then a fishing license, because they do protect their fishing shores very strenuously. But for do-it-yourself hunters, you can go do a tahr, do a free-range stag, but a lot of it's going to be on privately owned land. There is what we have, what we call it crown land.
Right.
So they call it dock land. So there is dock land you can go and research, and if you go into a bookstore or a magazine store, you can find different maps and kind of figure out the areas to go. And it's a humbling experience. I went and hunted the west coast of New Zealand, and half the time if you don't even touching the ground, because you're crawling up through the briar and through these almost ancient looking peaks, and then if you get south towards Milford Sound, it literally is Jurassic Park.
Nice.
Yeah. So that would be the best way to kind of look into it.
Yeah, interesting. For people who, say somebody coming from Canada, are people bringing back the meat that they're harvesting over there? Is there ways to kind of donate it, or what's typically the best way to deal with that when you're in another country?
For cases like New Zealand, I don't know many people that have been able to successfully bring the meat back. Yeah. Because when you bring the hides back, you have to have all your different export permits and that kind of thing, especially from South Africa as well. We couldn't bring any of our meat back. And truth be told, I'm still trying to get some of my skins back because of the whole Cecil the Lion deal, and then there was an embargo and everything like that. So a lot of the meat, especially in South Africa, goes towards feeding the trackers and their family. So that meat is not wasted. And to be honest, we ate a lot of the meat. Gemsbuck is probably one of my favorite meats over there. It's like a fine filet mignon. It's almost as good as sheep. Not quite as good, but almost.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But in New Zealand, to be honest, when I lived there, we did eat red stag. But you never really wanted to hunt them when they were in the roar, which is March, April, because it's just like eating a really, really ruddy bull elk over here. Mm-hmm. And especially when they're rutted up towards the end of the season. I mean, they're skinny, they've got adrenaline pumping through them. So a lot of times people would take the meat and then they'd use it for dog food. because a lot of people have, pig hunting dogs, or they've got, mustering dogs.
Do you ever hunt caribou in northern BC?
I haven't really in northern BC. I've seen caribou in northern BC, but
Okay.
where I grew up, we were just kind of on the outskirts of it. Historically, there used to be a bunch that had moved through, and they're definitely on my hit list. I'm sure you guys as well as BC residents. But the herd, it's so fragile, and it's hit and miss. Hey.
Yeah, we can talk about this a little later, but Mike and I were planning a trip up to northern BC at some point this year. We're trying to still figure out the exact dates, but caribou is on top of the list. But we've talked to a few folks that say, if you wait too late into September, if you get one of the rutting caribou, they can taste the worst.
Oh yeah.
Out of all the rutting animals. So
oh, yeah.
We just kind of heard that briefly from a couple people. So I'm not sure if you heard the same thing or.
Oh, I've dealt with it firsthand.
Yeah.
I remember having to gut one, and just dealing with the hide. Like I'd rather just chew on a tire, to be honest. It is foul because they're eating lichen and whatever they've got in their digestive tract. It just tastes like, yeah. Anyway, we won't even go there. But I think if you can hit them early, especially if they're still in velvet and they're just getting out of velvet, so like end of August, beginning of September, they should be pretty good. But yeah, if you wait too long, then it'll be all over. Coming from BC, where that's the mentality, when I first went up to the Northwest Territories, we eat caribou as a staple in our hunting camp. And I was like, oh God, like, am I going to be that person? Am I going to be rude and be like, oh, no, thank you. Maybe you guys have an acquired palate for it. And then when I had it up there, I was like, wow, this is better than moose steaks.
Nice.
So
yeah, I've heard the fat almost goes like into the muscle seams, but I'm not sure. I've just been hearing stories. So yeah, I guess the moral of the story that I heard was don't wait too long into the season.
yeah.
But we're kind of factoring that into our plans. We're shifting things a little bit.
Yeah.
But I guess to go back to guiding, I'm not sure how much you know about Mike and I. We're pretty new to hunting, maybe 2 or 3 years now. But in terms of a year in the life of a guide, I don't know how much detail we can get into here, but we're just curious what it looks like.
Well, in the height of my worldwide guiding career, you have to love living on the road. I literally had a storage locker in West Kelowna, and I had it set up with different gear bags. And from January 1st to March 31st, sometimes into April, I'd be on the trade show circuit, working for the different outfits where you're promoting or doing seminars. From there, I would head straight to New Zealand, catch the end of the roar, guide in New Zealand until about the middle of May when it really starts getting into winter there. Sometimes I'd come home a little bit earlier at the beginning of May, have a week off, and then I'd go straight into bear camp. Do black bears. I usually did black bears on Vancouver Island, and I've guided inland as well, kind of like coastal BC. And then from there, I'd finish up bear camp the beginning of June. When I was working for Shockey, the middle of June, we'd start getting things ready and head up camp when we had to do the Argo roundup. And when I was a kid, we'd start going north in June because you had to start rounding up the horses because they all free winter range. And so for those northern camps, we'd be in early season, June, July, getting ready, and then August 1st for sheep in BC, July 15th up in the NWT, and I'd be guiding straight through there all the way to the end of September in the NWT, and then I'd start guiding my way down the highway for bison and moose and goat until they closed kind of the end of October. I'd have a week off, and then I'd go out to Saskatchewan and help run baits and film hunts. And that would take me kind of to the beginning of December, and then I'd have December off to visit with family and get my taxes done and kind of regroup and then hit the road again.
Wow, it's busy.
Yeah, it was a fun way to get my feet wet. I think most guides, they're in it for the fun because they really truly enjoy hunting, or they're in it because they want to become an outfitter, or they have, a different career plan further on. Because you and I both know, like, even early in your career as a hunter, like 2 years in, there are grueling days where you're carrying a heavy pack. Like there's a lifespan as a guide.
Yep.
So I think that's where it kind of factors in where even at, I'm in my late 20s, and there are some days where I'm like, God, do I really want to go hunt a moose as a backpack guide? Not really. I think I really like horse guiding at this stage. So, everyone's got to kind of pick their path and figure out what they want to do.
Right. And in each of those centers that you're guiding in for different species, do they have folks that just stay there year round and they're just scout, like they just scout all year so that when the time comes, they kind of know what's up?
Not really. There's a few outfits where people can actually live on location where they have deeded land. Sickany River Outfitters is one of them. Mike and Dixie usually stay there year round or have a caretaker. But not 90% of the outfitters, they go and they winter at home. They'll go and they'll see their areas if they got the trap concession, and they can go and try and do a little bit of a wolf cull, or they'll ferry goods in. But a lot of times winters are so grueling that far north that no one really wants to stay there.
You're the second guide that we've had on the show. I don't know if do you know Jeff Lander from Primitive Outfitting?
I don't.
No? So he's a local guy. He's got an outfit up in Prince George. He's got another set up in Alberta as well for mule deer. But we didn't talk much about it on the air with him. But one of the things we were talking about with him afterwards is some of the challenges that guides have in BC. What are some of the things that you've come up against?
In BC, when I was guiding, a lot of it is resident pressure. If that answers your question, it's, a lot of it is social media has taken over as a presence. People are smart. They can use Google Earth. They can figure out where you're going based on the mountain ranges that you have in your photo. So as a guide, I don't like to show a lot of landscape shots because you kind of protect your area. It's like you're micromanaging your own little herd that you've been watching, so to speak. So the hardest part as a guide is dealing with resident pressure that, people are chartering in. And I'm a resident of BC. We have just as much right to be there, but I've had a lot of residents be really quite rude and quite terrible and bust my hunts where I clearly was in that area. I'd set up a spike camp. I was stalking in on a sheep. And I've literally had guys run up the mountain with their dog in front of them, barking, chase a ram up over, and I've watched that ram 3 ranges just booking it.
Oh, wow.
So, there's an etiquette that I think does our hunters a disservice in BC because we do have some of the most coveted hunting in the world. I've traveled enough to know that it's really hard to think about ever leaving BC from a resident hunter standpoint.
Right.
Think of the sheep and everything that we've got. I think we have 19 of the big 29.
Yeah, it's unreal.
For North America. So I wish if there was any way that we could make it better is that there would be, a little bit more respect between each. We're both there for the same reason, but play by the rules, and you don't have to be, the jerk next door about it.
Yeah, I think we agree with that, and it's we've got something amazing here, and I think it's important to share. It's good for the province. It's good for tourism, and it's just a unique experience that people won't get anywhere else. And I would like to have the opportunity to hunt in other countries as well. So I think it goes both ways. But yeah, it's too bad. But I guess the work has to be done, and people have to get along. That's all part of it. But you can't make everybody happy. I guess that's the main issue.
Well, my question for you guys then, so as you're researching these areas to go, is from a non-guide standpoint, do you look at where certain outfits are set up? Like just for example, to see, okay, well, there's an outfit here, so there must be somewhere safe to go in case, we have a wreck or need to hike in somewhere. Like, is that a part of the factor as a non-resident who's not involved in the outfitting side?
Well, I think, like I mentioned before, we're pretty early in well, we got to get on this now. But one of the things I want to do is contact the CEOs up there. But that's another good point, knowing where the outfitters are. And then also like the details about caribou, for example, like you don't want to hunt them in certain time zones. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we should be considering in this trip, I think. And it's our first trip to Northern BC. So it's definitely a learning curve, even in these initial questions and planning period.
Yeah, well, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. You'll learn so much, even just in planning your own trip. As opposed to which highway you're going to take. How are you going to be able to do it? There's certain restrictions on vehicle versus foot. Are you guys going to backpack?
We're backpacking, yeah. So, it's a good thing we started early because our plans are really evolving like week by week here. Just, as far as where we want to go, what we need to bring in. We were thinking the end of September, but then the whole, issue of caribou not being so great later in the season is starting to affect, the idea of when we actually want to go up there, and maybe we want to focus on a different species. So we're pretty growing up in the Kootenays and living in the Okanagan. We've got a pretty good idea of how we could plan things around here. But when you're heading north to an area that you've never been in before, it's totally different, especially, you don't have contacts in the area and you've never been there. So it's a lot of guesswork. But I guess the main thing is just to get up there once and then see what it's like. And then the second time around, you're going to come back with a better game plan and, a clear idea of what you want to accomplish while you're up there. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of work, but that's the fun part about this time of year is that you get to make these big plans, and it's a lot of fun. We enjoy this part of it. So,
well, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing how you guys make out with that.
Yeah, us too. It should be good. So, yeah, and there's like the road that we want to take in. We're not sure. It sounds like the bridge is knocked out of commission quite a bit. So that's one of our main concerns up there. There's also been a roadblock. They've been blocking access to it in previous years. So. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but lots to figure out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know what? The biggest thing I could give you guys in advice is always have, your safety tools, whether that's a Garmin with the emergency spot location services or just being able to check in. Like some of the bigger things is safety, and then that's one thing that with the tools that are available, I know even there's so many resources that people in the States have. You think of Go Hunt or Hunt and Fool, where they literally they pinpoint certain locations. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I've straight up told my friends at Go Hunt, I rue the day that you ever bring this to BC, because you don't understand how vast our province is and how much danger people can put themselves in if they haven't taken the time to do the homework. They really don't deserve to be in the backcountry, because it's not just a walk in the park, and it's not just 50 miles from the nearest road and gas station like a lot of places in the States.
Yeah, it's an unforgiving landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you don't want to take that for granted. One thing we had Aaron Snyder on a while back, and we were kind of talking about emergency devices, and one of them, I have a InReach. I think if we were to do something like that, we'd also rent a sat phone.
Yeah.
So we'd always kind of back up the one option. And then obviously setting the rules up front, just how far we want to go in and what the secondary plans are and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, definitely not something to take lightly, because if you get into trouble, it's not a good situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's all learning. You guys seem, when it comes down to doing your homework, I think you guys will probably be spot on.
Yeah, I think so. And having this podcast is a pretty, it's a huge advantage just because we get to talk to people like yourself and ask questions that, Kelly and I don't have a mentor to kind of guide us through this thing. So that was, a big part of why we're doing this. It's just a great opportunity to talk to people and make sure we're, going out there with the right advice and the right equipment, because you can get into a lot of trouble, especially in British Columbia. You're dealing with, a huge province. And like you said, you're not that close to a highway a lot of the times, or even a phone or anything like that. So you can get yourself into trouble in a hurry. But on that note, what are some of the common mistakes you see when you're guiding people? Is there something you see often as far as, I'm sure you prep them as much as you can beforehand, but there's certain things you see?
A lot of the times, coming from the outfitter standpoint, they will send a gear list, and that gear list is something that they've contrived from their guides. So to be honest, the biggest mistake I see even today with all of the opportunity people have to go to Bass Pro, Cabela's, or any fine wholesaler is bringing the wrong gear, or bringing gear that they haven't tested before they come on a big hunt. That has got to be any guide or outfitters or even hunting partners' worst nightmare, when you're hunting punny. They show up and they've got boots that look squeaky clean out of the box, and they haven't worn them in.
Yeah.
They've got thin cotton socks, and they're wearing all polyester, and they've got no good layers, or they've got a weapon that they're not comfortable shooting.
Right.
They haven't shot their firearm in, or they bought something that's way overpowered. For example, taking a sheep, you don't need a .338 Lapua with a super hot round.
Right.
It's that kind of mistakes that you see most commonly. A lot of it then stems into attitude. People you would think when they're researching to go on a big game hunt that they've spent their time, looking at websites, looking at past photos, get kind of a feel for the terrain. And a lot of outfitters, via social media, via websites, they have all that readily available, and they also have a list of references. So, a diligent client or, hunter, for that example, is going to go through and, for the most part, the numbers will be right there, or they can request information and go, hey, I've never been on a sheep hunt. I don't want to look like, the new kid on the block. Do you have a reference that's going to shoot me straight, tell me what's going to work? And, especially from the client standpoint. And most outfitters will be like, yep, no problem. Here are 4 different people you can talk to.
Right.
That'll give you a very honest translation. So there are resources that I think people can look into. And like what you guys are doing with the podcast. If you can get your gear nailed and the weapon that you're going to use, and you got half a good brain about navigation and where you're going to go, then I think you'll just rock it.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but us being new, we found that the hunting community is very supportive. So if you're hopping on the forums and stuff like that, it seems like people, for the most part, are very happy to help out and give you good, solid advice. So, that's the stuff we often tell guys. We hear from a lot of rookie guys that are listening to the show. So that's one of the main things we tell them. And the other thing is what you said too, is getting out there with your equipment like now before the hunting season starts and trying it all out. So there's some big purchases that we have to make for this northern hunt as far as shelters and a stove and all that kind of stuff. So before, we go all the way up to northern BC, we're going to do multiple trips just to try out all of our equipment, make sure everything's functioning the way it should, omit anything we don't need, and find out if there's something that's missing. Because, once you've hiked 12 hours in the backcountry, you can't just run to Canadian Tire and pick up that thing you left behind, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's probably the best way. We do it at home too. When my boyfriend and I pack in, to their state parks down in Montana, we set up, the new tent that he got from Montana Canvas and made sure that we had a good system that was going to work. We ended up adding different rope lines off of it. So that way we could pull it tight so we weren't going to have any, seepage leaks or anything like that. And ended up getting a few odds and ends. So that way, we took it down and we ended up adding to ours, which minimalistically you probably didn't need to, but for what we were doing, we were able to actually go in and know what our system was. And that gives you almost that sense of security. It's like, okay, well, I know I can control this much. So, and with all the other variables you're working against you, you take what you can and you try and perfect that.
I'm just going to ask another question about this hunt that we're planning, but when we were talking to Aaron, he was saying, like, if cold is a problem, then you're going to need a stove. And if cold isn't a problem, then you're going to deal with bugs. So given the amount of time you spent in up north, let's say we were going to push that hunt closer to end of August to early September, do you think that cold would be the issue or bugs?
It depends on the season, to be completely honest.
Okay.
The last few years, I know especially in Northwest Territories, we've been exceptionally damp. It's been very damp. So I know guides in BC have shared the same sentiments. So usually, especially up in that North Country, you will have a frost or two in the end of August. If not, a little skip of snow here and there. So for the most part, bugs should be to a minimum. If you were going the beginning of August when everything's hatching, I'd say good luck to your boys. Bring your DEET. Literally. And those
100% DEET.
Yeah. And those bug nets, I kid you not, that was the best investment when I was a backpack guide. You can sit there and you can glass, or you can sit there and just wait out, if you're waiting on a sheep or something.
Mm-hmm.
You put that bug net on, you're laughing. Everyone else thinks you look like a fly fisherman, but you're like, hey,
nice.
I'm not getting nipped.
Yeah.
That late in the season, though, if you can, I don't know what kind of tent you're looking at, but, when I was backpack guiding, we don't have a lot of trees up there. Mm-hmm. So we had a very, ultralight tent or something like a Hilleberg.
Yep.
That, is all 4 seasons. So in case it does get cold, you're in hurricane winds, that thing's going to stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I did invest in a sill tarp because you get stranded anywhere, and especially in that North Country where you do have the opportunity for trees, if you have to pull off the mountain and wait, with the weather out, if you have a light little tarp like a sill tarp that you can stretch between the trees and have a fire outside, you'll be fine.
Okay.
If you were going to be there late in the season and say you're moose hunting and you're going to be sticking it out when the snow's hitting the ground, then I would definitely go towards, one of those lighter Kifaru tents that have the stove that you can pack in. But if you don't need to, I would not pack the extra weight in.
Right. Yeah, we were kind of having that dilemma, the Hilleberg versus the stove floorless option. So I think you...
Sorry?
I was just going to say you could probably make... It's kind of like splitting hairs sometimes, but you can probably make both work. But that was kind of my thinking with the Hilleberg is it might be a little hot if you don't need it, and it might be a little cold if you do need it, but it kind of covers the whole range a little better.
It does. It depends on how long you're going to go and what you're going to do, because, if you have the opportunity where you don't have to worry about packing it in, but you do have a floor mat in, say, the Hilleberg, the biggest thing I can say that boils down to your layers. Like as backpack guides, you can't carry a stove that late in the season. If you are, you're moose hunting and you're hunting where you get dropped off. That's nonsense to us. So my best advice is get a Thermarest, like the X-Ped.
Yep.
They have an R rating of 9. I have a really good down sleeping bag that I got at Mech. I've had it for 4 years now. And if you're wearing a good merino base layering system, even if you are drenched to the bone and you can hang your stuff up in trees so it'll dry, or hang it up in your vestibule and you got to wait out a storm, strip down to your long johns where you got that merino, crawl in your sleeping bag, and the heat will dry that out. And then you'll be warm. Like, to me, packing a stove, if you're going to, because that's still technically, it's not late season, so packing a stove to me is a little bit out there. But, I mean, it's totally up to you and your comfort level.
Right. Yeah,
But
the R9, that's pretty intense. That's good.
It is, but you know what? Like, it's a survival air mattress. I mean, I could float down a river on that thing if I had to. But some of the places that I've camped on the top of the mountain, I have had the best sleep of my life.
Yeah.
It's got a Super Duty loft on it, and it's a little bit heavier than like the Neo Air, but it doesn't make the crunching sound. The ribs run the right way, so you're not rolling off of it. And I personally, when you get weathered out, you're going to be laying in that tent, so I'd rather have something super comfortable.
Yeah, get a little sleep. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So we want to transition a little bit into a different topic. Last night, Kelly and I went to a town hall meeting that was put on by the BC Wildlife Federation, and we couldn't help but notice that I think there was only 2 women in a group of 180 people.
Also, there was not a ton of younger folks there, like under 35. So I think we should just send a note to the listeners that if you're under 35, show up for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I was getting at is, like, do you feel like it's a male-dominated sport, and what kind of advice do you have for young women that are getting into hunting for the first time?
It's like anything. There's male domination as far as whatever sport it is, because it's just, there's just a lot more males that get into it. There are a lot more women that are starting to guide now.
Right.
I can think of half a dozen off the top of my head. But one thing that has happened is it's kind of become like a fitness, self-provider, guru-esque, niche where people are all of a sudden getting on board. I think it's a little bit slower to happen in BC and some parts of Canada, but when you go down to some of these gatherings and even like Wild Sheep Foundation show, it is a very young crowd now. So I think it's catching on, but I would highly encourage the women that, that are in their later teens, and even if they're in their mid-20s and they're working on their careers and they still want to be able to go out and hunt, or you're a single mom, like, it's a great way to network and meet people that legitimately are there because they're vested in the outdoors.
Right.
It's not necessarily about the killing. So, and it shouldn't ever be. So the biggest advice I'd say is just attend them, because you'd be surprised who does show up.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to, get inspired is to go out to those types of events. A town hall meeting is a different story, but, it's just something you notice when you're there. Yeah, do you feel like the sport is becoming more welcome to women? I know that, like, finally they're starting to create clothing that is actually designed for women rather than just smaller sizes. So do you feel like it's getting better?
It is. I feel like a lot of times people are saying, oh, we're recreating the wheel. Women have never been in hunting. It's like, no, we have, but we just haven't had the staunch voice that we do now.
Right.
You know, the hunting camps that I grew up in, and, you know, you talk to people of yesteryear, and women have always been involved, and there have been a few outliers that, you know, started guiding or did own outfits. And, you know, you think of the sourdough women up in the Yukon that legitimately were there gold panning beside them. But I think now it's become such a commercial market that they have this drive moving forward that's pushing women and encouraging them. You know, there are a lot of women that have done well, saying, well, you know, you can be a girly girl and go hunting.
Yeah.
But I think there also needs to be kind of a certain realization that, you know, for every time that I've gotten the, you know, really uncomfortable stare or pause and like change a conversation when I tell them what I do.
Right.
Especially because, you know, I'm blonde hair, blue-eyed girl under 30.
Right.
So that goes back to, you know, the whole mares and geldings things. Don't show up with a mare to a branding, because the geldings will get their nose out of joint. Someone will think they're a stud, and it's the mare's fault, obviously. So, you know, from the cowboy mentality, it kind of transitions over, and it's like, well, any girl that's ever come up and said, well, I really can't do that, or I shouldn't do that, it's not right. It's like, no, what makes it not right? You know, I was told that you can't wear makeup in hunting camp when I was, you know, first starting out, because it was, you know, sexual harassment. And I was like, what? It's like, if I'm going to wear mascara and look like a goober because it started raining and it's running down my face and I look like a clown at the end of the day, that's my own personal choice.
So be it, yeah.
Right? You know, rock on. But at the end of the day, there has to be kind of that self-awareness. It's
Right.
taken a long time for me to be comfortable, because there were certain, you know, idealisms that were pushed on me when I first started out, and I didn't have really a mentor to ask questions or to look to. So you kind of just make it up as you go along. And for the women that are out there, they're, you know, for the town hall meetings and stuff like that, it never hurts to ask. The organizers usually have wives and stuff that attend, and if you're a new time person that wants to get involved, even going to your local archery shop, like, people want to sell women stuff now. You know, Sick of Gear is making the women's line, because there are enough of us that are like, okay, guys, like,
Right.
I'm tired of looking like MC Hammer. Fix the crotch, you know, let it out in the hips, make it a little longer, you know.
Totally.
You know, women got curves, like, let's work with this here. It's just, they had to see that market that was going to be there, because at the end of the day, it's business, right?
Right.
So they knew selling to men was easy. The hardest part that I think this industry will always face is that women sell sex. They have throughout all of industry. You know, you think of the planes in the war times. It's just having that friendly barrier of, okay, you know, you can be a good-looking woman or just a woman in general and feel good about herself in the backcountry without being a sex symbol. You know, and I think that's the biggest thing that women face right now. It's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be in the backcountry, I've got to look good for my boyfriend or whatever. You know, I have to be on point with my makeup and hair. It's like, sweetheart, in reality, you don't have time to curl your hair. You got 6 horses to pack, and you got to be on the trail in half an hour. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, it's funny. Kelly and I were talking about social media, and it goes for men and women. You see some things that you wonder if people are in it for the right reasons, or if they're just trying to make a career out of something. And I think you have to change your direction if that's what you're going for, is to become famous and all that kind of stuff, when really it's just about getting out there and having a great experience. So you see some things that make you wonder if they're, you know, actually going out and doing it, or if it's just something they're hoping to draw attention from. But social media also has a lot of great perks to it, and I'm sure you have a huge following, so I'm sure it feels good to be inspiring other women to get out there and hunt as well. Do you get a lot of good feedback through there? Or?
You do, actually, and it's really nice. Like last night, you know, while I was visiting here in Alberta, I met a good friend of mine, Megan Simpson, for a beer, you know, and we were actually talking about the exact same thing. And it's the people that want to be Insta famous, that are partnering with all these up and coming brands, and, you know, they're in it because they want to have a show or whatever. You know, there will always be those people, and rock on, good for them. But the people that are in it for legitimacy in the long haul are usually a little bit more quiet, you know, but they have that longevity to them as far as a career. And Megan and I, she's grown up in the industry. Her dad and her uncles and her grandparents were in the outfitting industry since it really started in Alberta. And so, you know, it's been interesting talking to someone whose family has been in 3 generations, and how it's changed and transitioned. But at the same time, it's, I don't know, you have to support people. And at the end of the day, I feel like the people that are authentic, that are going to be around for the right reasons, will just naturally shine. You can't fake passion. people will see that. You can't recreate a story that's not there, because eventually people catch on. So,
Yeah.
That's one thing I tell a lot of the girls that I, get messages from, or even when we talk gear and get totally geek out on information. It's like, if you want to be taken seriously, maybe don't post so many duck lip selfies. Just saying,
Exactly.
Not everyone wants to know when you've worked out last. Like, that's great, good, healthy lifestyle, but people get really tired of that. And it's funny when you walk around the trade shows now, like, it was really hip and popular to do 2 years ago. And now it's like, that's cool. We admire that you're living a healthy lifestyle, but if I see one more Instagram feed of someone working out, I'm just like, okay, cool, that's cool, but let's change it up. I don't know. That's me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in one way, I'm kind of disappointed I didn't start this earlier in life. But on the other hand, I'm thankful that I started later, because you kind of get a perspective of both sides. So, I mean, I don't think Mike and I, like, we grew up in the Kootenays, so we never actually, we never bash hunters or anything like that, but we were a bit indifferent to it. We were always out in the outdoors anyways. So when we did get into it, everything clicked. And now you kind of get the appreciation side and the obsession, and it's kind of going the other way. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of cool to see both sides. And especially nowadays, there's a lot of it comes down to social license. And
exactly.
And I think it's pretty important that people show up for a lot of these, like we were talking about the town halls and BC Wildlife Federation. There's a lot of changes in that group. So they seem to be looking at things more from a top down, and trying to get science involved so that they can actually get the social license to do some of these things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's just a wave, right? It's a new wave of people that need to be getting interested and getting involved and being able to give back, because people like to be a part of a bigger picture. They like to feel like they're belonging to something. And so that's where I would encourage everyone to kind of figure out, okay, do I really like elk hunting? Well, look into Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation BC, or if you're a sheep hunter, look into Wild Sheep Foundation BC. And like, there's so many different avenues. You don't have to just be that person that goes to every single convention because you want to, and then you spread yourself too thin. Like, there's different opportunities within each, and different get-togethers and bow shoots and community events too. Not always just sitting around talking politics, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to meet people there too. What are your plans for 2017?
Ooh, good question. They're actually shaping up, and this year, I'm hosting my own podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, so our mutual friend Cody Rich, he's been a long-term mentor of mine for the last, 2 years, and it's kind of turned into something that I started and stopped, and I figured, well, you know what, I'm doing it for the reasons, much like you guys are, for your own personal gain in the sense of information and knowledge. I feel very passionately about conservation, so my podcast that's going to be coming out is the Full Curl podcast. So it's basically a sheep hunter's podcast for the mountain hunter. It's going to be a nice mix of real conservationists that are actually out in the field doing the work, the people that are there supporting them, and the history, the guide outfitters that really made the West what it is today and established our hunting. So for myself, my goal eventually is to be an outfitter one day, and having that know, like, and trust with the people that want to book with you, and that, that sense of ownership that they know where the start began is kind of the reason I'm doing mine. So
cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. Cody, we'll have to give him heck for it. He started asking me questions, and we had a little bit of a joke out. He's like, one day I'll let you own your own podcast. And I was like, oh, thanks, Cody.
Yeah, we had fun with him too.
Yeah, he's a good cat. So
yeah. So when are you rolling that out? Are we gonna be able to listen to it before we go on this trip? Maybe get some tips.
Yeah, for sure. So we just recorded the first one yesterday, which was the 4th. I can't even tell you what day we're on. The 5th of April, and my rough draft will be out next week. The hardest part is the back end with the website stuff. I had a little bit of a hiccup with a programmer that I was using. Because our plans had been changing. And so hopefully in the next 2 weeks, the website will be live, the podcast will be rolling. And then from there, the first podcast is probably going to be the special one that is a little bit near and dear to my heart, because Harold Grindy gives us on our 5th year a sheep tag or a moose tag. It's kind of like an appreciation for working that long. And last year was my 5th year. I packed a sheep tag all season, never had the opportunity to go hunting.
Oh, wow.
This year, we're a little bit overstaffed, and he said, well, do you want to go hunt a sheep for yourself on the first hunt? It's like, yeah, yes, I do. And then from there, I'm inviting someone that is very special in my life that hasn't got to go on a sheep hunt to that extent, and it's kind of been like their childhood thing. So it's released in my first podcast, and I think the way that I'm going to tell that person is I'm going to let them privately view the podcast or listen to the podcast before it goes live. So that's kind of the way I'm breaking into that. But
Nice.
yeah, thank you. But between now and then, I'm headed to Missoula this weekend, and Anchorage, Alaska. I'm a part of the Thin Horn Summit that meets every 3 years to help work on problems for the thin horn sheep populations in the Northwest. So it'll be 3.5 action-packed days up in Anchorage.
Nice. Sounds exciting.
Ooh,
We hope to kind of, hunting is a big part of what Kelly and I are doing now, but it's not something we get to do as much as we like. But, with this thing, I think it's going to open up more opportunities. But it's nice to hear that it's keeping you busy and you're getting to travel and meet all kinds of people. So that's super inspiring.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah. So before we let you go, if people want to find you, where can they go?
Right now, Instagram or Facebook at Rachel Ahtila, RachelAhtila. And the Full Curl podcast will have its own link on Instagram and as a Facebook page. And the website will be www.fullcurlpodcast.com. And the personal blog, travel, and photography side will be www.findyournomadie.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we're both looking forward to hearing your podcast for sure. So once it hits the airwaves, we'll be sure to check it out and let people know that it's out there. So
Awesome. Mike, Kelly, thank you so much. It's been awesome talking to you guys.
Yeah, you too. And if you're ever in Kelowna, it'd be nice to meet up.
Yeah, for sure. Homeboys, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Take care, guys.
All right, thanks. You too.
take care. All right. There it is. Rachel Ahtila. Is that how you say it?
Yep,
Okay, good. Nailed
I
it.
think so.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I don't know. I didn't want to focus too much on the whole female hunter side of things, but I am always curious about how it is. And I know a lot of people had been asking us from the beginning to get some women hunters on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's number 3 now. Because Megan was a hunter, Tammy, and now Rachel. So
Yeah, exactly.
we've got some
I
more
think she,
in mind too.
Yeah, she approaches it pretty well too, right? It's the whole actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, she's out there guiding doll sheep, and she's a good example of for women in the hunting community for sure.
Yeah, even for men, like
Oh,
she's
exactly.
out there, like, yeah, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and energy, and that's as she said is around the clock kind of thing from month to month, and it's nonstop, and you're always on the road, which from the outside looking in sounds like a lot of fun to be traveling all the time, but so it's nice to be home too.
Yeah.
So
It's like anything, right? Even when you were building the studio and we were in bands and playing music a lot, it's kind of like, oh, sweet, Mike's gonna have a studio. We're gonna be able to jam whenever we want.
yeah,
And get these bands going. And then once you have a studio, it's all your time goes into that. And
I know.
then all of a sudden you can't play in bands. And so sometimes it has that reverse effect too.
Yeah.
Right? You do something you love and then it kind of turns into work too. But
yeah,
I don't know. I get the impression that in Rachel's case, she loves what she does. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm looking at my drums to from the control room into the live room. My drums are staring at me every day. I'm like, oh, I should go out there and play the drums for a bit, but I'm always so busy working on other people's shit. But
yeah, I think you got to give them some love once in a while.
yeah, every once in a while
They'll
I'm
hold
out
a
there
grudge against you.
and beat on them.
Yeah.
When you record some new ads or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing is keep your eye out for Rachel's podcast.
Yeah, we'll let everybody know when that goes up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to hearing that. So there's 3 good podcasts out of British Columbia now, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Journal Mountain, or it's Beyond the Kill.
Yeah.
Rachel's is going to be called Full Curl,
I think that's what she said.
I believe. Yeah. So yeah, we'll keep an eye open for that.
Cool. Well, Jesse's coming up. Jesse Zeman was originally supposed to be scheduled before the BC Interior Sportsman Show, but we're going to make this a sort of wrap-up show. He's going to be in here on Good Friday, which is coming up. So you can look forward to that one. But you're getting 2 episodes this week. Got Hank and Rachel. And you can look forward to Jesse probably next week sometime. So
For sure.
as always, leave us a rating and review in iTunes. Check out the website, which is theRookieHunter.com. There's Oscar right on cue. Anything else you want to add, Cal?
No, just good luck with the fishing and turkey hunting and bear hunting.
And big thanks to Rachel for coming on the show.
Yeah. And send us some photos if you get something out there.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, don't be shy in sending us emails. I know we had a couple come in just this morning here, guys from all over North America. It's really cool to hear from everybody. So keep the emails coming. We might not respond, but we definitely read them. So send them over. Cool. Let's wrap this up.
Sure. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.